across the border into Syria to feel things out and met all the contacts I would need to return and travel deeper inside the country, from fixers to rebels. Photography had never really been a passion of mine, just something I was good at. What I loved was history and traveling. Hoping to find a career that combined what I was good at with what I loved brought me to Syria, after a year spent crossing the globe to test my abilities both with a camera and to communicate with people who didn't understand a word I said. Recording history turned out to be something that came naturally to me, especially in a war zone. I'd spent the day before in the Carmel Jebel district of Aleppo, where some of the heaviest fighting in the country was underway. It was like nothing I had experienced so far, which is saying something since I'd spent 2.5 days outside the besieged Air Force Intelligence Directorate, or Jawiya, at the time considered the most dangerous place in the city. Carmel Jebel had been literally reduced to rubble, and I made my way to the front that morning with 2 FSA, Free Syrian Army, soldiers who were carrying giant blue jugs of water to the fighters. It felt like we were walking through Stalingrad. There wasn't a building untouched by bullets or bombs. As we walked, I noticed a woman in a black burqa about 200 yards away, standing in the middle of a street that was almost impassable due to all the downed poles, electrical wires, chunks of concrete, and other debris. After a quick exchange of yelling in Arabic between the rebels I was with and the woman in black, I snapped a shot of her walking into one of the doorways. I couldn't believe people were still living there. The front was probably a 5-minute walk from where I was staying at FSA headquarters, but with all the precautions taken to avoid getting shot at, it probably took close to 15 minutes to get there. We had to stick to the sides of some buildings to keep out of range of snipers' scopes, and jet past others because there was no cover. But finally, after cutting through a factory and heading up some stairs, we arrived at the front, the top floor of an abandoned apartment building. 3 of the most badass-looking FSA soldiers I had ever seen were sitting in front of a wood-burning stove. The first one, who caught my attention, was stunning to look at. He had dark skin and a black scarf wrapped around his entire face, revealing only these bright green eyes that glowed like emeralds and brought a certain elegance to the scene of carnage. Nobody there spoke English. As soon as I arrived, they all jumped to their feet to greet me and offer coffee or tea. I declined, being that, thanks to my nerves, I already had to piss so bad it was practically coming out of my ears. When I looked out the window, I noticed 2 small kids, maybe 8 or 10 years old, standing on the rooftop across the street from us, watching the fighting. They were surrounded by nothing but rubble, and again, I couldn't believe people were still living in this section of the city. The other 2 jihadis sitting with emerald eyes looked just as badass, but not as pretty. One gave the impression of being huge. He was only about my height, 5'11", but much bulkier. Almost immediately, he ran off and returned holding a digital camera, handing it over to show me the pictures. From the look of this guy, I thought I was about to see some really horrific shit on that camera, but I don't remember any of the images, so it couldn't have been that bad. The third jihadi had the least imposing presence, just a skinny kid with long hair, but he made up for that with zeal. "Yallah," he said, creeping over to the window with his AK-47. "Let's go." One of the rebels who'd carried the water set me up against a wall on the side of the room that was out of the line of fire, or would be unless they shot through the walls, which was very possible. As soon as I was in position, I gave him a nod and raised my camera. I just held my finger on the button while the jihadi stuck his skinny arms out of the window, letting loose a short burst of gunfire without even sticking his head out to aim. Then he pulled back to the rear of the room, and in less than a second, we heard the return fire, bullets hitting the building right outside the window. Assad's soldiers were close, really close. The water carrier gave me a look as this happened that said, "You wanted to go to the front, and now you're here." I was so jacked up, I felt my legs starting to jump. Now it was the big man's turn. He led me up the stairs to the roof, where the water carrier placed me in a snug corner that gave me